and current issues in sports from the 305 to the 412 and all the way to the West Coast. You can follow them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at JT and the Don, or email them at jtandthedon@gmail.com. Now take it away, guys.
Give them a shot to do what?
Welcome to the next episode of JT and the Don, presented by Give Us a Shot Network. I am the Don, Donato Bucci, and remember to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you find all of your other favorite podcasts. And remember to leave us a 5-star review, and also remember to subscribe to the Give Us a Shot Network YouTube channel. Happy New Year to all of you out there. We hope you had a good New Year and that your New Year is off on the right start. And we are glad you tuned in to our show tonight, because we have the leader in all-time guest appearances on the show tonight, Coach Connor Cassidy, offensive coordinator of the Landon Bears. But before we welcome him in, let's welcome in everyone's favorite. And before I do that, though, I just want to apologize to all of our fans and listeners out there for not having a show during the month of December. The producers always work around JT's schedule. He had a busy December. Now, on top of that, he's been under the weather last week, or so he says. But he's toughing it out tonight.
Wow.
So let me welcome in everyone's favorite, JT Jimmy Thompson. How are you feeling?
You're blaming me.
How are you feeling, by the way? How are you? You doing all right?
I'm getting better, man. I can't believe that I came on tonight just to be a part of, misinformation. But hey, it's a part of the job.
What do you
but
mean?
Thanks for allowing us to do the show.
We have the college football expert. What are you talking about misinformation? It's about as solid as you can get.
I was talking about you. I know he's legit. He's the only reason I came on tonight.
Whatever. So, again, let's welcome in Coach Connor Cassidy. How are you? Happy New Year. Thanks for your time this evening.
Doing well. It's good to see you guys. Good to be on the show again. Excited to talk about the season and preview the championship game.
All right. Well, you mentioned it, so let's get right into it. Preview the national championship game. So, Coach Connor, we're going to start with you as always. Give us your main storyline, or if you have a couple storylines, but at least the main storyline for this national championship game this upcoming Monday night.
All right, sounds good. Well, I think it's great that we've got number 1 versus number 2. We've got the 2 undefeated teams. It's also interesting that we've got future conference opponents who will play each other in October in Seattle next year. Which is a cool wrinkle. But I think the big storyline here is just the style of play. The way these two teams play the game and approach the game is very different. And Michigan playing like their smash mouth football and offense, where they really want to run the ball, control the clock, and have these long possessions, number 1 defense in the country. And then Washington with the high-powered, potent offense and passing attack, with all the skill on the perimeter, and obviously Michael Penix playing great football. And they just want to go fast and run the score up. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see which team can impose its will on the other and play the game at the pace they want to play. And, Washington was getting some heat throughout the year for not being a physical group, but I mean, they held their own against a really good front in Texas, and have proven themselves against Oregon and Utah and others that they're as physical as anyone in the country. And so it'll be great to see that battle in the trenches with the Washington O-line against the Michigan front. And I think whose style of play really can dictate the tempo will be a really interesting story to watch.
Nice. JT, what do you got?
I mean, this is what happens when you let him go first.
I know. I wanted to make you look bad, so that's why I let him go first. Since
you can't do that, you tried to do that for years.
Since you made me introduce the topic, he gets to go first. You look bad, and then I'll finish it off.
I can always just agree with him, and I'm safe. But no, I agree with you. I think the storyline is a style of play, and it's going to be, can Washington both on the offensive and defensive line handle the physicality of Michigan? Because, like you said, Washington's game all year has been put up these numbers, high scoring offense. And I think that's why Texas was probably not a great matchup for them. And, it's a shootout. I'm betting on Michael Penix, but Michigan, they showed against Alabama, they've showed against Ohio State, and they showed all year they can take the air out of the ball, time of possession, run it down your throat. Don't give Michael Penix those extra possessions to put up points. So I know Washington's O-line has done well. But I don't think they've seen a team like Michigan on defense. So I want to see if that O-line can hold up. I don't know if Washington's defensive front can hold up to Michigan's O-line. So I think that's the storyline. It's like, this great offense meets this, just steel ball. Like, which one's going to prevail? So that's my storyline that I think is going to be important.
Yeah, I think the storyline comes down to University of Washington. I don't believe that Dylan Johnson will be able to give him much. I know they said he's going to play. I just think due to his injury, and let's face it, he was already banged up going into, as we come to find out, if you listen to the broadcast, he was already banged up coming into the semifinal game. And it didn't get any better during the semifinal game. It got a lot worse. And if you notice, their offense in the first half looked great. Then he gets kind of banged up early in that second half, and the offense stalls. And I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think it is a result of they weren't able to run the ball the way they want. Dylan Johnson's a hard downhill runner, and they missed that. So how much can Michael Penix put on himself to will this team to victory against, as you guys said, a tough Michigan defense? I'm going to relate it back to he needs to be the 2000 Michael Vick Sugar Bowl. He needs to give us that sort of performance if they even want to stay in this game, meaning keep it.
So you want him to be a loser? Why not just say be Vince Young? Be 05 Vince Young against USC. That's what you want, right?
Well, okay.
A guy that should have won the Heisman. He's playing this team of destiny. He's like, you know what? I'll just take this game over myself. I want Vince Young.
Sure, we could go that route. I thought Michael Vick's performance was even better than Vince Young's, even though Vince Young's was one for the ages. If you go look, Michael Vick had no support in that game. And what I'm saying is, I guess I take it back. Yes, he would need a 2006 Rose Bowl Vince Young performance. He has the receivers to do it. I just don't know how much he really can put on his back, because he can't run the way Vince Young and Michael Vick could. Because you saw how much.
But Vince Young can't pass the way he can. So
understood.
We'll see what happens.
You saw how much of a problem Milrose scrambling was starting to give Michigan at times. I don't know if Penix could do that. And without Dylan Johnson, it makes it extremely difficult. Now, if Dylan Johnson runs the way he normally does, this is going to be a phenomenal game. I just don't think he's healthy enough to do it. So I think his injury is the storyline, similar to Miller's from TCU last year, where Max Duggan couldn't do it all. I'm going to skip the next question for now. I'm actually going to put it to the back end of the show of who you got. So both of you guys have time to think about it. There's a reason why I'm putting it to the back end. You'll find out later.
Just two things to add there. It's interesting. JT, you talked about teams of destiny, and I think that's another interesting storyline. They both feel in their own way like a team of destiny, with Michigan dealing with everything they have off the field, and then with Washington seemingly able to pull victory out week in and week out when they're like got their backs against the wall against opponents, and like managing to win all these tight one-score games when it doesn't look like they're going to be able to pull it out. So
they look like the Ohio State team that beat us in that Fiesta Bowl. It's like, how are they winning all these games? How are they undefeated? And it's just like, you look up and you play against them. It's like, it's a tough, physical, well-coached team. They have talent. Just because they don't put up 40 and beat teams by 20 each week doesn't mean they're not a good team.
They just find ways to win. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And then JT, excuse me, Don, to your
Whoa,
point,
don't ever get us confused like that. I mean, you know.
I mean, he has been tanning. He's been tanning all month, so I get how you confuse us.
It's just the studio lights.
The health of the players, they get like a month off to prepare for the semifinals, and then it's like a short turnaround before the championship game. So the team's health is certainly an interesting storyline to follow. All right, sorry to interrupt. You guys keep it going. Keep the show going.
You're all good. The show is all about you, man. And it's about to be about you right now because
there we go.
As Don likes to say it, he doesn't like to do it for himself, but on this show, we always hold ourselves accountable. Unlike mainstream analysts, we're going to tell you what we got wrong and what we got right. So the great thing is, I looked back. I had to go back and listen to this episode a couple times. I think you guys, not me personally, but I think you two did a very good job. So we'll go through some of these where we were wrong and where we were right with good and bad calls. So I always like my dessert first. So let's go with the good calls. I got to give credit to Don, man. All right off the bat, speaking of teams of destiny, calling Michael Penix Jr. and the Washington Huskies. I mean, nobody really believed that was going to happen, but you spoke it into existence. You were all on the Michael Penix train. He was your breakout star. I think you picked him for the Heisman. You're going to talk about if he should have won that or not.
Sure.
And what do you know? Washington is in the national championship. So I got to start off with that one. So props to you for calling that. And I'll give you another one too. You had Texas as your number 2 team preseason, and they made the college football playoff. So hats off to Don. I don't know. Maybe hanging around with Coach Connor is rubbing off on you. You're starting to make sense with these predictions. But I got to give you your props for that. Now, I will share credit with this. I think you and I, Don, called the 2 best transfers in Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. I think just the excitement factor they brought to Colorado. You saw when those 2 were on the field and healthy, how Colorado played rather when they weren't on the field. So I think out of our transfer predictions of who would have the biggest impact, we did call those. Now, I got to give myself props because I think I was the only one.
Of course you did.
I gave you this great introduction. You just can't share. You can't share the spotlight with you.
We're not here for you and I. See, look at our guy.
But I'm saving the best for last.
Coach C to go. Get to it.
He is. I will say this. My only good call was I think I picked the best breakout player, and it was wide receiver from Missouri, Luther Burden. He ended up being top 10 nationally in receiving, had 86 receptions, over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, had more receiving yards than Marvin Harrison Jr. So that's my only props to myself. I call it a good breakout player. Now let's get to the GOAT, Coach C. Because this is hard to hit, especially with all the candidates that were out there last year. He actually perfectly predicted who would win the Heisman Trophy. He picked Jaden Daniels. I mean, you had all these sexy picks, Caleb Williams, Bowers, Penix. I picked J.J. McCarthy. He's in the national championship, but he was nowhere near a Heisman quarterback. But you accurately predicted that Jaden Daniels would win the Heisman Trophy. So I got to give you props for that. And your belief that FSU could be the team that crashed the playoffs. And they should have. And nobody saw them going undefeated. So I think you guys had hell of a prediction in our preview show. Those are some good calls. Congrats to you guys, but I got to air out the bad stuff. So
you should have went first with the bad stuff.
I told you. I like my dessert first. This is the Brussels sprouts. I don't want this.
This is why we can't have you intro topics.
Yeah. So let's get with the bad calls. You said the show is all about the GOAT, Coach C. I think this is probably the only bad call that you had. And Don is going to share this honor with you. It was your breakout players. He had KJ Jefferson, quarterback for Arkansas. You had Cade Klubnik, quarterback for Clemson. Both of those teams struggled mightily. I think Clemson was 6th in the ACC. Arkansas was basically in the basement. KJ's in the transfer portal. Both of those guys under 3,000 yards passing and under 20 touchdowns passing. And both of their QBRs were not within the top 75 of quarterbacks in the country. So that is Coach C's probably only bad call. Don, you had more. I just didn't want to embarrass you. I had all the bad calls. Me calling Bama the most overrated team.
Yes,
college football playoff.
Thank you.
And the most egregious call, putting Wisconsin and Oklahoma in my top 5. Now, for like 3 weeks, I looked like a genius, but the bottom fell out of that pretty quickly. So I'll take credit for that. And the worst call, Don, we got to share this, is us calling FSU overrated. They, in fact, were not overrated. They were undefeated, and they were victims of our heinous voting system to get into the playoffs. So those are our bad calls. But as you can see, I think you guys hit a lot of home runs with the good calls. So props to you guys.
The committee must have had a lot of JT and Don's in that committee room, man.
They must have got our letters, because there was no way we wanted to see FSU in any kind of playoff, but they definitely deserved it. But shout out to you guys. Great predictions. I think you got way more right than you did wrong.
All right. Any thoughts on that, Coach? Coach Cassidy's in the studio with me. We just, we are.
You know what's funny about that, Coach? You have done more live shows with him than I have. I've never done a live show with him in the same room, so that lets you know how special you are.
I appreciate that. And that was good work from all of us with those predictions.
And it also shows how much JT and I don't like each other, that we've never figured out a way to do a show live.
If I was in the same room, you wouldn't be able to do the show. You'd just be so nervous. You'd be intimidated by my knowledge. So I don't want to do that to you. It would ruin the show.
Okay. Well, that comment right there just ruined the show. So let's go on. Great job, Coach Cassidy. That's why you're a college football expert right there. That segment, Jalen Daniels.
We need to start putting money down, because he gets too much of this right. You're a gambler. You need to set it up to where we can start making money off some of these things. You?
No. What? No. I don't even know if it's legal in DC yet.
You do know, but you just don't want to say it.
But I will say you're right, though. Next year, when we do the college football preview show, we take his picks. If we put something on all of those, one of them's going to hit. He always hits on one or two for sure. So we just got to do it.
Out of all his predictions, he only had one bad one that didn't turn out. And I mean, Klubnik wasn't terrible, but
do either of you know? I guess we could look it up. Our research and development department went home for the night, but do either of you know what the odds were of Daniels winning the Heisman at the beginning of the year when we did the show? I would love to know what it was.
Top 6,
but still, I mean, if he's plus 700 and you had put 100 down, you made a quick 700. Yeah. So. Anyway, let's go
because of you. Thank you.
Let's go to the check down game. All right. So this is where we'll ask a question. Coach Cassidy, I think you've done this game one time, but we'll ask a question. We'll provide multiple options for an answer, and then you simply select one of the options that you feel fits best. All right. So, Coach Cassidy, we're always going to start with you. The question: more impressive, Michigan's run this season with their distractions, or Washington?
I'm going with Michigan because I think if you look at it, they played 6 of their 12 regular season games without Harbaugh on the sidelines. And the back end of the season, the 3 games when he was serving his second suspension, those were some of the biggest games of the year, with Penn State on the road, Maryland on the road, and then Ohio State at home. And I think, Washington obviously had a great year, but they didn't have to overcome anything out of the ordinary, so to speak, whereas Michigan did. So for that reason, I give them the more impressive nod.
All right, JT.
Man, come on. I got to disagree with you, man. Michigan is a top 4 program at worst. Like, Ohio State and Alabama couldn't even beat them. Like, all 3 of us could have been out there coaching and beat Ryan Day this year with that team. It's got to be Washington. Like, they played the most competitive conference in college football this year. They had no stars on defense, a limited running game, and their star quarterback has an injury history longer than anybody in the country. Like, to me, what they pulled off and who they beat to get to this moment is as impressive as anything I've seen this season.
Well, if you listened, as you mentioned earlier in the segment before,
we already gave you credit. This is why we don't like you. There's no reason for you to double back. It's out there.
You don't gotta like that
you were right. Damn.
You don't gotta like me.
This is so unnecessary.
You just gotta respect me. So listen, segment before you said, who did I take? Washington. So if you listen to the show back in August, I expected this from Washington. Is it great what they did? Absolutely. Is it more impressive than Michigan? No, because I expected it from Washington. Michigan, when you put everything together, how impressive this run is, at some point you figure, all right, they can't beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. Well, they did that. Oh, they lost to TCU. They're going to falter again. Nope. They come back, beat Bama in overtime. And Coach Cassidy brings up probably the strongest point. Half the season, they didn't have Harbaugh. Any other team like Ohio State probably loses a game without Ryan Day. And then on top of that, what's even more impressive is not that they won without Harbaugh, but Sharon Moore is looking like the next great hot coach in college football. And on top of all of that, now you have this offensive coordinator / assistant associate coach that is like ready to take over a program, maybe Michigan's, maybe another
doesn't
one.
That kind of work against the argument for Harbaugh? Is like, no, don't get me wrong, like his impact, it was felt, but
right. But
to have a guy like him there when Harbaugh is not able to coach, I feel like it lessens his impact of importance in this argument.
But to me, it goes hand in hand. He has developed and built such an impressive staff that those guys can step up. Who would you say Alabama could do that? I don't know. And the fact that he has someone like that, did we know did anyone that is not a diehard Michigan fan or a diehard college football fan know who Sharon Moore was?
No, only Ryan Norman knew who he was. But
exactly. Shout out to our guy Ryan.
I will say this though: Michigan has been rolling ever since they got rid of Gaddis, and maybe not having Gaddis in your program is all you need.
Well,
it's autopilot once he's not there.
Hold on, that's unfair because Gaddis was the offensive coordinator 2 years ago when they rolled over Ohio State. Was he not?
But
he was.
But they took the next step once they moved on from him.
That's not entirely true, but you got to give him credit.
As Michigan fans, I think they would agree, but I get what you're saying.
Those are the fans. You got to give Gaddis credit for what occurred 2 years ago. Maybe he started this, and he'd be where Sharon Moore is now had he stayed, and if Miami didn't throw all that money to him. All right. Next question. More disappointing, undefeated Florida State missing the playoffs or Miami's season, Coach Cassidy?
Well, being with two Canes fans, I anticipate you guys will select Miami's season as more disappointing. And being, a Noles fan, I have to go with FSU going undefeated in the regular season, 13-0, Power 5 champ, with 2 SEC wins in their non-conference over LSU and Florida. And obviously the injury to Jordan Travis is significant, but they had a deep and talented roster everywhere else. And so not seeing them in the playoffs was certainly a disappointment.
All right.
Oh, yeah. It's for sure FSU not getting in as an undefeated Power 5 conference champ. Never in my wildest bullshit BCS era dreams would I imagine that would happen. Like, FSU is a nationally recognized program. They went undefeated, like in the year of teams that never would ever go undefeated getting into the playoff. Like, nobody expected Washington would be in over FSU if I would have told you this scenario before the season started. So them not getting in, definitely more surprising. The Canes are going to do Canes things. Like, it's Mario Cristobal. Like, nothing they do shocks me.
I mean, this is such a JT type question. I mean, only he was thinking what's more disappointing, undefeated Florida State or Miami season. Like, Miami's on no one's radar, JT. I'm not wasting this segment.
Oh, they're not on anybody's radar?
No.
You got like we didn't have elite levels of disappointment at times this season. The Georgia Tech game literally kept you up to like 3 a.m. You wouldn't shut up.
It did.
You went to bed at 3 a.m. and then got up to church at 6. That's how mad you were about the Georgia Tech game. And there were other things about this season that were just unfathomable. So it's a legit question. Like, our rival going undefeated and missing the college football playoff, or us just having maybe 3 or 4 moments that will be talked about in sports history forever for the wrong reasons.
It's clearly Florida State because they actually had real expectations. So when you get burned like that, it hurts. Miami, it's all false expectations until they actually do something again. All right, next one. again, the question, more disappointing, USC or Colorado's collapse?
So I'll build off your point there with expectations, and that leads me to USC. Looking at the preseason AP poll, they're picked number 6. They finished the year losing 5 out of their last 6 games, including a drubbing by their crosstown rival UCLA at home. The 2 weeks prior to that 6-game stretch to finish the year, they had to squeak out victories over Colorado and Arizona, which you don't think of when you think of USC. And obviously, this is all with Caleb Williams, the defending Heisman winner. They had these additions in the transfer portal to their defense, and they thought the defense was going to be better and give Caleb and the offense some more support. And it simply didn't pan out, and they even fired Alex Grinch midseason after they lost to Washington. So I would say for those reasons, USC is a more disappointing collapse.
JT?
Oh, no doubt it's USC. You got Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, 2 guys that everyone tells me these are the most generational people in college football. Lincoln Riley's the wonder kid offensive coordinator. He'd win 10 league titles in DC in a single year. And Caleb Williams is supposed to be the next Patrick Mahomes. And you telling me you're the 4th best team in the Pac-12? Like, and you almost finished worse than that, because if Colorado would have had Travis Hunter, they might have lost that game too. So what USC did in regression this year was unimaginable. Like, it's disappointing because everyone thought Caleb was locked to win a second Heisman, and it just didn't work out. Like, how? Tell me how Michael Penix with nobody else is better than Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams in year 2 together. That nobody would go to Vegas and make that bet. So USC is definitely the most disappointing amongst these 2.
Well, don't say Michael Penix doesn't have anybody. There is a guy over there named Rome.
We know his name, but
right.
Those 2, so if we were before the season, and I know you say you're not a betting man, but if you're on your little app and it's like Rome and Penix or Caleb and Lincoln before the season, who are you betting your money on to come out of the Pac-12? I know it ain't Washington.
He picked Washington.
What did I say in the preview show?
I want the man to put his mortgage money on it. He would have picked Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley if you had to bet on it.
Coach C and I don't have JT money bags, all right? So what money do you want us to put on? A couple dollars? Sure. Okay, I'll put a couple dollars on it next time. No, you're both right. It's USC's collapse. Everything that you said, plus they got to the Pac-12 title game last year. They don't even sniff it this year. And on top of that, talking about expectations, I mean, realistically, what were the expectations for Colorado? Very little this year, and they actually exceeded expectations so early, which then probably hurt them in everyone's eyes that it was a collapse. It's because they played really well early on. So, there was no real expectations there for Colorado, except to stay in games, which they did. So it's clearly USC was more disappointing. All right, next one. More likely, Nick Saban is declining or Lincoln Riley is overrated. Listen, Alabama fans and Nick Saban are going to hate this show because JT keeps trying to drag this guy and his program down.
Oh, my God.
Happening.
God forbid I entered topics for us to discuss in this show that people are talking about in the real world. We can't talk about how great of a pick Washington was for 60 minutes. We can't do that. Well, this is not the way the show is wired.
We should. It might make the world a better place. So, Coach Cassidy, going to start with you. More likely, Nick Saban is declining or Lincoln Riley is overrated?
So this is a really tough question. I think it's a really interesting question. And I actually think that, Lincoln Riley, the coach, is not actually the problem. When I was thinking about this, I think Lincoln Riley at SC might be more of the problem. And so I think if Lincoln Riley's actually back at Oklahoma, we still think of him in that same way. I think Nick Saban declining, I mean, essentially the numbers or the stats speak for themselves when you consider this is the first time over a 3-year span when Saban will not win a national title since being at Alabama as the head coach. And so for that reason, it's hard to argue that he isn't, staying where he is. And so at that point, you have to say his performance is declining. even though that's like we're considering his decline over his like incredible expectations.
Yeah, like he's still at the top of the mountain. He's just coming down to
like
one
like,
less level.
Correct, right? Like he's declining relative to the standard that he has set for himself. But the fact that they haven't won a championship now in 3 straight years is declining for him and their standards at Alabama.
So you're saying more likely is that he's declining?
Yeah, I mean,
okay, interesting. Okay, JT.
Yeah, you want me to answer this terrible question? Like,
yeah.
We talk about
what also makes this question tough is like, where do we rate Lincoln Riley? And so, depending on where you put him, like, is he overrated or not? I'm not sure.
I think we comfortably put him inside the top 5 coaches.
Top 5.
As far as if he was out there and available, would a program want him? I think he's in the top 5. I think there's maybe only 4 other guys that he would have to compete with to get the job. This was tough because I do think there is a little bit of an overrated factor to Lincoln Riley as a head coach, but not necessarily a play caller, like you said. And Don, we talk about this all the time. If you're going to be bad at something as a coach, don't be bad at something that's your specialty. And he ain't bad at offense, so I can only go so far on the overrated. But it's Nick Saban. And yeah, he's at the mountaintop and he's not at the basement now, but I mean, he is declining. I mean, Coach C already said that 3-year span, we're not used to seeing this. But just look at all the things that are changing around him. It's very similar to what's going on with Bill Belichick. I think the game is passing him by. Transfer portal, NIL. I think I don't know if it's his stubbornness or his ability to not adapt to get a new style, more updated offense into Alabama more consistently. Still haven't seen that on a consistent basis. Like, if he doesn't get a coordinator like Sarkisian or Lane Kiffin in there, like, the offense goes back to the Bill O'Brien special every year. And I'm just surprised that he doesn't have offensive coordinators just lining up to go to Alabama, because you're going to have all-star talent. So some of it, I think, is on him. And this is what happens. Bill Belichick has gone through this. When you lose so many elite coordinators that become good coaches over the years, it's hard to replace that. Like, think about all the coordinators that Saban has lost that have come through Alabama over the years. Like, there's just no way you can keep that track record and just replace them. Like, you can't have a factory replacing players and coordinators for that long. So it's just natural regression with Nick Saban. So I got to go with him. Why are you looking? Because the question is actually being talked about? Go ahead.
No, because
don't even answer. It doesn't matter. What's the next question?
I'm disappointed in both of you. I mean, I can't believe this, but I'm going to have to go against Coach Cassidy here. The answer, I guess, if you have to pick, is that Lincoln Riley's overrated, but it's not necessarily because he's overrated. It's because Nick Saban is not declining. He may have been, and you can go ask former players, you can go ask current analysts of college football that know way more than me, right? They know less than Coach Cassidy, but they know more than me.
We did ask an analyst that knows more than you, and he says that you're wrong.
And Nick Saban may have done his best coaching job this year since he's been at Alabama. When he started in 07 or 08, they said he may have done his best coaching job this year. So how is he declining? On top of that, when you look at his team in years past, you would say, hey, we know the quarterback, Bryce Young, 5-star blue chipper, Jamison Williams, Mechie, Devontae Smith. You've got Najee Harris. I mean, you go down the list, right? OJ Howard. Like, you have these all-star of players, all-star of skilled players, all-star of skilled players. Who's the running backs? Name me the running backs. Who are the running backs of Alabama?
You got to tell us.
No, I don't know who are they.
Tell us.
Neither of you know. Who's the star receiver on this team? What's his name?
They don't have a good receiver. But I said that before the season.
Okay.
I was like, this is why I was down on Bama.
Okay, and that's fine. But the reason why they're not down is because the guy at the head, he still knows how to do it. And don't say the game has passed him by. That's really disrespectful. And don't compare him to Bill Belichick, because even though
so he's not the Bill Belichick of college football?
No, because even though because he's winning. Belichick's not winning. Bill Belichick's problem is player personnel, which he should give up. It's not his coaching. And so it's not Saban's coaching. Because let me ask you this. I'm going to use your own words when you talk about his staff changes, this and that. You know what? That stays constant is him. He stays constant. Winning stays constant. So that goes to show you how great of a job he does, that he doesn't need the best assistants around him. Now, the fact that they're changing makes it challenging, and he overcomes that just the way he asks his players to overcome certain situations, whether it's a bad call, whether it's an injury, next man up. And
You're
most
making
importantly,
it seem like we
hold
said
on.
that he's dead. Like
Hold
we
on.
specifically said that.
But the question is declining. Forget
He
about
is
that.
declining. He has been declining
JT,
for 3 years.
JT, did they win the SEC championship last year? No. Did they beat Georgia and Kirby Smart this year? Yes. How is that declining? Answer that for me. How is that declining?
It was one game. So Missouri won 11 games. So that means, they're the new hot shots in the SEC. Like,
they are.
It's
they
one
are.
game. It's one game.
SEC better watch out for.
I think you're trying to join two things together. Is he all of a sudden not a top 5 coach and he's dead? No, we're not saying that. We're just saying Nick Saban ain't as automatic as he used to be. And you've been seeing it. There's a reason that Georgia exists. There's a reason that Washington and Texas are getting into the college football playoff. There's a reason that Michigan is dominant. It's because this is what happens when you're at the top and little by little you start getting peeled away. It goes to other places. Like, there was no parity in college football when Nick Saban was the GOAT. There was none. It was Bama and who was going to get smashed by them by 40 points. Now, other teams have a legit shot to win a national championship now. That's how you can tell Nick Saban's declining. It's not a diss.
JT, 2 things with that. One, they had to come up with NIL in the transfer portal to level the playing field. All right?
Did I not say that?
Okay, but that's natural. That has nothing to do with
that's
his
what I'm
coaching.
saying. It's a natural decline.
But it's not a decline. It's a leveling of the playing field.
These are supposed to be quick. For somebody who said this topic was horrible, he going on and on and on.
Because you're simply wrong. And 2, the guy outcoached Kirby Smart with Jalen Milroe, who didn't even start against South Florida. So that is coaching. He coached up Milroe. He figured out how to win with this team when he didn't have as much
I
talent.
get it. Great coaching job. I'm not saying he's a bad coach.
And listen, Oldsmos Bros says it all. Good call on Saban, Don. All right, next one.
That's all he needs is to see a positive comment.
What would we have said if they didn't complete 4th and 31?
What
would we have said if Daniels didn't go out in the 3rd quarter against LSU?
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But the fact is that didn't happen.
Right.
Like, we could say, well, what happened if, Chris Davis doesn't return that kick 6, right? Like, history's different. Alabama wins another national title. Like,
you taking Nick Saban or Kirby Smart right now?
After this year, Nick Saban. If we're going into next year, everything else is equal. I'm taking Nick Saban. Now, if I'm factoring in age, if I'm factoring in
you are the AD at the university. They gave you a blank checkbook. They said Harbaugh, Saban, Kirby Smart are all on the table.
But that's different. But
that's essentially what we're saying.
No, it's not. No, it's
we're not dissing, and we're just saying he ain't the end all be all anymore.
That is different, because that would be like saying, are you taking Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, or the young guy CJ Stroud?
I'm taking Patrick Mahomes. I'm making a choice.
There's a lot of factors that go into that. Age is obviously one of them. Contracts another. Blah blah blah. So anyway, more likely to sustain success: Washington, Texas, or Oregon? Coach Cassidy.
This is another really interesting question. I think when you consider all 3 of these teams will be playing in a new conference next year, and so they're going to be playing new opponents. More challenging schedules for Washington and Oregon. They're going to have to deal with significant travel hurdles. So I think, really interesting and tough question. I think I take Washington out because what they're going to lose to graduation. And I also take them out based on how they're recruiting relative to Texas and Oregon. Texas and Oregon both recruiting at like a top 5 level nationally. But I'm going to give the edge to Oregon. I think they've had sustained success in the past. I think they're well suited to continue that success looking into the future. They got Dylan Gabriel in the transfer portal. So, I think that'll give him a boost on offense. And I believe in Dan Lanning. I think he's a great coach. Another young up-and-coming star in the industry. And I think, from all that I hear, they've got their NIL ironed out, and they've got a big presence there as well, with Phil Knight wanting to win. So
Dan, he's out there. He's out there playing for clicks now. Oh,
Dan Lanning, that's JT's guy, coach.
I know.
God forbid somebody does NIL, because he's out there playing for wins, not for clicks.
That's right.
All right, JT, well, who you got?
Got to disagree with the GOAT. I'm all choked up. Oregon, Washington. You're right. I mean, once they lose these guys, it's going to be hard to replace them. Oregon, they're always funny to me. They should be a team that just never goes through any kind of regression, but sometimes they do. It's Texas. And I never thought I would say this because I just never liked Texas, especially not this year. But they got three things that I don't think those other two programs have. One, they have a legit top 3 or 4 offensive coach at the helm of their program. So you're always, excuse me, you're always going to be able to attract top talent as long as Sark is there, at least on the offensive side of the ball. The other thing is, let's not forget, as many years as Texas has not been good, they always still are at the top of recruiting. Texas basically recruits themselves. They never go through dips. So the more notoriety they get, the better they do. Their recruiting is only going to get better. And here's the kicker. They got the one thing that these two other programs don't have. And I don't think Oregon can consistently do this. I don't know how they do it. They have the gateway to get guys that play quarterback that could be franchise quarterbacks to go there. Like, think about it. They got Arch Manning to go there when Quinn Ewers was already in the stable. And it's not like Ewers was a senior, he's a sophomore. Like, they are always going to be able to get those top-tier quarterback prospects out of high school as long as Sark is there. And I think that's the thing that's going to put them over the edge compared to Oregon. And I think it's sustainable as long as Sark is there. So I'm going with Texas. This is going to be something that they're going to be able to do going forward. Like, Sark got over that hump. Now people believe Texas is back. All the talent, all the quarterback talent is going to have to go through Texas in recruiting.
And you're wrong again. Your completion percentage on the checkdown game is atrocious. I agree with Coach Cassidy. It's Oregon. JT, Quinn Ewers, and then to Arch. I'm not sold on Arch. But you know what Oregon did? They bring in –
They got our guy who should be a Miami Hurricane.
But not only did they get Dante Moore, they got Dylan Gabriel too.
I get it.
I mean, how do you talk about, I don't know how Texas does it. How did Oregon just pull that off? They already had Dylan Gabriel in the stable, as you said. And you know who they bring in?
They better be lucky that Moore is a California kid. Something about California kids, they just refuse to leave the West Coast.
The West Coast.
Us East Coast kids, we'll go play anywhere. We'll go to University of Alaska if that's where the ballers are. Like, they will. Them being on the West Coast is the reason they pull that off. It ain't because they're Oregon.
And that was going to be my other point. I know they have competition with like USC, UCLA, but let's face it. If you're a West Coast guy, the spot to be is Oregon. There's really no game day atmosphere at USC. It's like Miami at times, unless it's sold out and against the crosstown rival UCLA, the Coliseum's half empty. And so if you're a West Coast guy, the spot to go if you want to stay on the West Coast, because that's what they do according to JT, is that you want to go to Eugene, Oregon. That's where the experience is. And the other thing too is Texas is going to the SEC. Like, you think that's easy? I don't care what kind. They've had recruits. Texas has had number 1 classes, and they couldn't win in the Big 12, which played no defense. So how do you expect that to go to SEC and continue this success? But what I will say is, as Coach Cassidy said, Dan Lanning's a good coach. He's a recruiter. He's a motivator. But his style of play.
I heard his speech.
It
was great.
His style of play, as they say, it travels. So Oldsmos, bro.
Did he travel to Georgia when he played them 2 years ago?
I know you're saying
he must have left his style of play on the plane in Oregon, because I didn't see it in Atlanta when he played against Georgia.
That was his first year there, right? So he was just building the program.
Oh, yeah,
All right,
just
thanks.
building, okay.
So Oldsma Bros appreciate it, but Oregon rude awakening when they go to the Big Ten. Why? Because they got 3 teams to worry about: Ohio State, Penn State, kind of, and Michigan. That's all they got to worry about. Ohio State can't. Oh, Iowa can't score. Iowa can't score. Wisconsin, we don't know what they're doing there. They're trying to become something they're not with the dairy raid, but that's not them. You got to run the ball, man. Like, who else you got there? Illinois, Northwestern, like they're no better than any other team in the Pac-12. So to me, it's Oregon for everything Coach Cassidy said in their style of play, that ground pounded because they want to run the physicality that'll travel, especially in the Big Ten. So I'm going to go with them. And then real quick, we got to go back to Scotty because he's our guy. He's always watching. Saban is coaching better, but is missing out on recruits to Georgia and other schools with NIL. That's fair, but he hit the nail on the head right there. Saban is coaching better. All right.
That's why we can't give him access to materials. He's just gonna cherry pick. He skips over any comment that says he's wrong or he's crazy. He's like, "Oh, I'll take this one. See, this guy says I'm right."
All right. Next one. Bigger impact transfer for next season. DJ Uiagalelei to FSU, Leonard Riley to Notre Dame, or Dylan Gabriel to Oregon. Coach?
Don, you were mentioning it. Oregon also got Dante Moore in addition to Dylan Gabriel. So I think you take Dylan Gabriel off the board. And I think DJU is like, he's on his 3rd school in 3 years. If he was really that dynamic, he wouldn't be moving around that much. And so I don't think he's the biggest impact transfer there. So I'm going with Riley Leonard to Notre Dame. It's a great get for them. And I think he'll have an instant impact. You saw what he was doing for Duke this year, putting them on the map. He's mobile. He can beat you with his legs, and he's obviously like a smart, talented thrower as well. So I think that's my pick there.
As Lee Corso would say, good pick. JT.
Well, I ain't picking Morris because he should be a Hurricane. And if you can't make it happen at UCLA, I mean, come on, you're supposed to be special. So now he got to sit behind Dylan Gabriel. So we'll see. DJU, he was the same guy at Clemson. He was like, I suck because they didn't let me be me. Well, you went out west and they let you be you, and now you're back out east. So that tells me everything I need to know. Riley, low-key, is the best pickup in the transfer portal. I'm sorry. Like, look what he did at Duke. And I know Jaden Daniels had an amazing year, but if we're talking about dual-threat quarterbacks, this guy is up there. He's up there as one of the best in the nation. I mean, can throw, can run. Now you put that kind of dynamic in Notre Dame's offense. Like, when's the last time we seen a guy that didn't run like a 5-3 play quarterback for Notre Dame? Like, it just doesn't happen. Now you're going to put that guy out there with Notre Dame recruiting, the talent they're going to bring into that program consistently year after year. Like, I'm excited to see. Like, look what Hartman did. Like, that's a typical Notre Dame quarterback. Now you add this wrinkle. I think Riley could be special.
Yeah, it's one, by process of elimination, it's Leonard Riley, and 2, exactly what you guys said. Listen, he's going to be even better for this Notre Dame team than the transfer they picked up a year ago in Sam Hartman, which everyone thought, man, he could lead them to a national title. And, Notre Dame played well. And to have Marcus Freeman there as a coach, I think that program's getting better, and Leonard Riley's the right guy for them. So definitely he's going to have the biggest impact of those 3 guys that we mentioned. All right, so let's do one last review of the season, and we're going to pick one from these following categories that you feel the category. So we'll start most disappointing team, Coach Cassidy.
I had a couple candidates here. We already talked about USC and their collapse. So instead of repeating those points, I'm going to focus on Texas A&M here. A preseason top 25 pick. They finished at 7-6. Obviously, they fired Jimbo Fisher. The whole Bobby Petrino experiment that they, thought was going to revitalize the offense and take something off of Fisher's plate and calling the offense sort of backfired. They finished 4th in the SEC West. They finished with a loss in the bowl game to Oklahoma State, and they've got 23 players in the portal headed out from their program. And so, I'm sure there's some Aggie fans who are happy about moving on from Jimbo Fisher and getting Mike Elko to come in, but certainly a disappointing year there for the Aggies.
That is a good one. That is a good one. Especially when you beat the Canes the year before and then lose to the Canes. It's never a good thing.
So that's just it. They also just didn't have a signature win, right? There's no win on their schedule that you feel like really good about.
Yeah, I feel like they almost could have with the Bama game, right? Was it the Bama game?
Yeah.
Yep. JT, who you got?
I mean, it's low-hanging fruit. It's got to be Clemson. Like, everyone thought that the ACC was open. Like, nobody thought undefeated Florida State was waiting in the wings. It was like, it's Clemson and maybe FSU can sneak up on them and get some wins along the way. And it's like, nah, like Clemson, everybody was sneaking up on them and it wasn't even a battle. Like, they're like, we beat them. Like, come on. It's got to be Clemson. Like, the fall from grace with them is, I haven't seen anything like that in years.
So when you think most disappointing, you also got to factor in expectations. And that's why I think, probably at the top of our list for all three of us was USC. But I'm going to take a different route where there was expectations, not national title, but there was expectations to make the jump into JT. And I know as Miami fans, that's always the most disappointing is when like, hey, we're going to, we're 8-4. We can go 10-2. And then
you know what? You can tell we're such a loser program. Like we set expectations in like hope dreams. If we can just go from 5-7 to 7-5, that's progress. No, that's horrible. That's how bad it is to be a UM fan.
But that's why it's most disappointing when you're at a program like that. So I picked South Carolina. They were 8-5 last year. Made their bowl game, had that big win, if you remember, at the end of the 2022 season against Clemson, which I think was at Clemson. And then they followed that up with a 5-7 season. They lose to UNC. They lose to Tennessee. They lose to Ole Miss. They lose to A&M. Oh, they lose to Clemson. So both of those teams were mentioned just now. And then on top of that, they lost to Florida, who was not very good. So
Florida could easily be on this list too.
They took a step back. No bowl game. They lost the teams they beat previously. They took a step back. And that's why, to me, it's like that's most disappointing because I'm sure South Carolina fans, as Miami fans, we know what they're going through. That's brutal when that happens.
Nah, I'd rather be a South Carolina fan. I'd be way more optimistic.
Wow. All right. So most disappointing player, Coach C.
Man, I this one was tough. I think I got to go with Caleb Williams. And again, it's like expectations compared to performance. And he had a good year. Statistically, he's decent, but he took a step back in his yards, his touchdowns, and he threw one more interception. But if you consider the defending Heisman Trophy winner didn't finish in the top 10 in Heisman voting, and he finished, I think, 11th in total QBR. So he didn't even finish top 10 in QBR. I would say that that's a disappointing for a player of his ability.
JT?
I think Caleb Williams also can't get out there and sack the quarterback and intercept passes. I feel like the thing with him is I think it's this prospect and voter fatigue. They're like, we said this before the season. It's like, if he doesn't have the greatest year ever, after he had the greatest year ever, like they're not going to give him any awards. But I guess it was disappointing. Before I give this answer, because I could have easily said this team for the disappointing team, I want to make sure. Because he called me out last time when we did this show. Is our guy in here, Mr. Tennessee, volunteered himself? Where he at? He in here? If you in here, drop it in the comments. Because I told you that team was not going to do what you thought it was going to do. And my disappointing player is the quarterback, Joe Milton. Think about this. Before the season, everybody was like, oh, Joe Milton's is top quarterback. He going to play himself. He going to be in a top 10 NFL draft pick. I don't hear shit about him. I don't even know if he's draft eligible. I don't know if he's declared for the draft. He might be a senior. Is he a senior? If so, he might be undrafted now. I hear nothing about Joe Milton now. He was the Heisman darling at the beginning. This NFL prospect now. Like, I don't even hear. I haven't heard about Joe Milton in like 4 months. And the stats back it up. Like, under 3,000 yards passing, barely got the 20 touchdowns. And what's the stat I had? He also he threw just 20 touchdowns, and only 3 of those 20 touchdowns came against top 25 opponents. So that's disappointing. Like, I was thinking that this guy was going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL draft. The next Anthony Richardson is all I kept reading, and now it's like, is he going to get drafted? And they replaced this guy when they had Hendon Hooker. Like, think about the drop off from when Hendon Hooker was there to Joe Milton now. Joe Milton's way more talented physically, but just didn't get it done. So that's my most disappointing player.
I mean, Tennessee could have been one of those teams on the most disappointing.
I had him, but I was like, I didn't know if our friend was there, so I didn't want to get in trouble again.
I think most disappointing player, we mentioned him earlier, and we kind of shed good light on him, but I think that was a little bit false, is Sam Hartman, for 2 reasons. Las Vegas and his coaching staff. So Las Vegas at the beginning of the year had his over-under at 3,400 passing yards. He ended up with 2,689 yards only, over 700 less yards than what Vegas thought. And on top of that, he threw 127 fewer passes than he did the season before. You know why? The coaches took the ball out of his hands. They didn't even believe in him. So when they signed him, just like we're talking about Riley Leonard now.
Or they didn't need him as much because they had a damn good running game this year. They had one of the top running backs in the country.
AJT, are they in the title game Monday night? Did they make the playoffs? No. So you need your
Michael Penix did.
You need your quarterback even with a running game. So I think it's him. Vegas and the coaching staff told you what they felt about him. It was disappointing.
Time out. We're all wrong. And I'm only going to put this out there because I got to hear this in our group chat. Apparently I got to hear it today. These Pitt Panther fans just can't let it go. So Phil, quarterback that bum, his grandma probably took his photo off her jacket. So
photo button, yeah. So
we got to hear about Phil every day in our chat, and now we got to hear about him today. So yes, he was also a one-time Notre Dame quarterback, was he not? He was recruited to Notre Dame, so I guess Notre Dame is the theme of this question.
Maybe. All right.
Did you guys consider Drake May?
No, I don't know. I think there were more disappointments. He played well enough.
Yeah, I did not as well, just because I think his draft stock kind of stayed, put. Which had that.
I also didn't want to put Brock Bowers on. He missed 5 games, lowest everything of his career. But I mean, he is who he is.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at the good side now. Most surprising team, Coach Cassidy.
Well, I could go with the Mountaineers. They had a great year.
Oh, look at the jacket.
Finished.
I like how he just backs up camera.
Yeah.
He's like,
you couldn't see it all show.
Picked preseason last in their conference and ended up with 8-4 regular season and going to the Duke's Mayo Bowl and getting a good win there. But I'm going with Arizona. No one was talking about Arizona in the preseason. They were preseason 8th in the Pac-12, and they finished with a 10-win season. They had a great year, and they had wins over Utah, Oregon State, UCLA, Washington State, and additionally, they took to USC in the Coliseum to triple overtime in a game they easily could have won, and they only lost to Washington by 1 score. So a really talented group. Had a nice win over Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. Great year for them, and a team that I don't think really anyone saw coming. So
all 3 losses, Coach Cassidy. All 3 losses.
1 possession.
Well, all 3 losses occurred by October 7th.
Okay.
So it goes to show you how they really started to turn it on as well. JT?
Are we alive in this show? The obvious answer is the team that I was wrong about. It's Missouri. They won 11 games and second in the underside of the SEC. Are you kidding me? Like, preseason, they had Jake Garcia as their quarterback. I'm like, this team's going to be trash. No way they can win this many games. 6-5 wins at most. 11? Come on, man. That's got to be the most surprising team.
So I'll throw honorable mention. NC State went 9-4. They were number 19 going into their bowl game. I think a lot of people would not have thought that.
9 wins is like the NC State special, man. Come on. Everybody expects that.
Not every year for them, but I'm going to agree with Coach Cassidy in the difference. I had all the points that he has, so that was great. I'm going to distinguish them between Missouri because Missouri's another good one. But I think why it's Arizona, JT, they've been bad, man. I mean, they have been so bad. Like, if someone would have told you at the beginning of the year, hey, which of these teams is more likely to get 10 wins, Missouri or Arizona?
I would say that's a pick 'em.
No, because you saw what Missouri did last year against Georgia. You know who their coach is. You know he's rebuilding, turning that program around his own way. Arizona, bro, they have been off the map for decades since the Desert Swarm and Teddy Bruschi. Like, they have been off the map. Like, they can't keep anybody there. And to do that, I think it's Arizona because it really came out of the blue. Like, if you would have had to pick one of those two, I would say give me Missouri because I don't even know what Arizona's doing out there. And all of a sudden, they do this. Like, that is amazing. Both did it.
They won 7 straight games. I mean, that is impressive. I'll give them that.
Yeah. And Pac-12 was really good this year.
Yeah.
Let's not be fooled. All right, so last one, most surprising player, Coach Cassidy.
Speaking of Missouri, I went with Cody Schrader, their running back, who's just got such a cool story, right? He was a Division II player and then walked on at Missouri. And I don't think, now he's a first-team All-American. He had 9 100-yard rushing games this season, over 1,600 yards and 14 TDs, was the leading rusher in the SEC, and helped lead his team to an incredible season, as you guys just were talking about.
JT?
Man, there's so many guys you could put on this list that don't play for Tennessee. I feel like I had 3. I don't want to say this one guy because I feel like, Don, you're going to pick him, but I'm going to go with a guy that I had no idea who he was. I don't even think he played that much last year. And he's only a sophomore. Ollie Gordon, running back for Oklahoma State, comes out of nowhere, leads the nation in rushing, 21 touchdowns, second in the nation. Is that who you're going to say?
I had him written down.
Think about it. He was nobody.
62 carries last year.
That's it. 62 carries. That's nobody. Like, he wouldn't even get an NIL deal with those stats to leading the nation in rushing and at the top in touchdowns. Like, I don't know what they're putting in the water out there at Oklahoma State, because last person I saw do this was Chuba Hubbard, and he kind of came out of nowhere and had one of these type of seasons. But a sophomore doing this with all the running backs that are in college football this year, I mean, that's damn impressive.
So I had him on the list.
I know the other guy you have, and that's why I didn't say him.
No, I had him on the list. I got Shedeur Sanders on the list because I think he played even. He had over 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. I think people didn't expect that with him making that jump to a Power 5. And also have honorable mention for Jalen Milroe. Like, where did that come from, right? Especially
and he got benched.
And he got benched. But the guy I'm going to go with, I don't even know how to say his first name, but he plays at Arizona. I believe it's Tetaroya McMillan. 90 catches, 1,400 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns. JT, you ever heard of the guy?
Thank God you can say McMillan.
Have you ever heard of the guy? And he comes from Hawaii. Like, I mean, the fact of what he did along with the Arizona team, like, come on, that's most surprising. Like, I think if even if you didn't know who Ollie Gordon was, the fact that he's a running back at Oklahoma State that produced Thurman Thomas, Barry Sanders, Hubbard, and some other guys, you would have said, all right, he has an outside, he's got a puncher's chance to be known. Who's this McMillan guy? And who's throwing him the ball? Oh, he plays at Arizona? It's not going to be any good. 90 catches, 1,400 yards, 10 touchdowns. I mean, listen, that's like Heisman-worthy stats there. So I'm going to go with him.
I agree with you. Another guy, I didn't want to put him on here, but to me, I feel like he came out of nowhere, just the jump he took this year, but he was solid the year before. How about because none of us talked about him in the preseason show, Malik Neighbors.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, for him to lose the Blitnikoff by 1 vote to Marvin Harrison Jr. and have better stats than him, like, nobody saw that coming. So I gotta put him on that list too.
But why I would say the difference between him and McMillan is
McMillan for sure. I'm not taking it off.
LSU has had those guys before. Chase, Justin Jefferson, Beckham. Like, that's kind of known there. But you're right. We didn't talk about him. Definitely had a great year, probably better than Harrison. Any other names, Coach Cassidy, you want to put on there?
No.
All right. So let's go to everyone's favorite segment nowadays and the most popular in sports radio. Forget about or Fugazi. We're going to read a statement. If it's a hot take, you agree, it's forget about it. If you disagree, cold take, it's Fugazi. Make this quick, JT. Coach Cassidy, first one. Michael Penix should have won the Heisman.
Fugazi.
Why did you just say forget about it? He said quick because he wanted us to agree with him. Forget about it. He should have been the Heisman Trophy.
Yes, forget about it. He's the first QB since Mahomes with back-to-back 4,500-yard seasons. Did you watch that Texas game, Coach Cassidy?
Only the first half.
I did. I watched the whole game, and he was incredible. The only problem is that game happened after the Heisman voting.
But it just proves that he should have won it, is what I'm saying.
I think that's
the Vince Young, Reggie Bush scenario.
No, because there was no Reggie Bush. Daniels lost games. He had Malik Neighbors. I mean, come on. All right, next one. Jim Harbaugh will leave Michigan for the NFL. This is a topic all on its own. We got to do this again. We'll bring you back to go in detail on this one.
Let me say,
come on.
I'll go Fugazi again.
Ooh.
I just think I think it's so obvious that he's going to leave. Everyone's saying that, but of all the head coach openings, I don't know which is the best fit. And I think he's flirted with the NFL a few different times. He's always come back. Why? And, it's looking more and more likely that the Bears are going to retain their coach, which I think would have been a good fit. I mean, do the Falcons fire Smith?
We hope.
And then I just don't see Harbaugh going there. From what I've been reading, like the Chargers aren't willing to shell out the money or give up the responsibility. So I don't know that the right fit is there. And I just don't know. So what everyone's saying, because the NCAA sanctions are going to drive him out, or, he's made it to the championship game. I don't know. I think he sticks around.
All right. Listen, I'm going to go Fugazi. This could be a topic for another show, but I'm going to agree with Coach Cassidy. I think it's Fugazi. He'd be crazy to leave at this point. JT.
I think it's Fugazi, one, because there's only one job that I would leave Michigan for, and that's the Chargers, because they got Justin Herbert, and like you said, they don't want to shell out the cash. And why would you leave Michigan? Like, Saban's going down, Dabo's dead.
Yeah, he's declining.
And Ryan Day is still a coach at Ohio State. Like, life is great if I'm Michigan. This is a dream job. Why would I leave it? Like, think about how hard Jim Harbaugh had to work to get to where all these things align in his college football coaching world. Like, it'd be crazy to leave it now, especially if they win. Fugazi.
Anything else, Coach Cassidy? I felt like you were going to say something else.
No, I just if there were a better fit, I would maybe buy it. I don't know which opening really would be a good match for him.
My thing at the end of the day now is college coaches, money's not the issue anymore, right? Like, can you believe we're saying that the Chargers are not willing to pony up as much as Michigan does?
They owe so much money though. Like, all their players are overpaid. They just fired a coach and a GM.
Yeah, but
they're not the Rams. Like, they're not swimming in money like them.
But it's a $15 billion industry. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
Everybody's not getting the $15 billion.
Yeah, but the revenue sharing is equal. All right, last one. The transfer portal is ruining college football.
Fugazi. I mean, look at those semifinals. Look at this championship game we got coming up. I think they need a lot of reforms. I think there's improvements to be made, but college football is doing great.
Nice. JT?
Fugazi. It's giving value to the players. It's getting players on the map that necessarily didn't get a chance to go D1. Like, look how recruiting is going. Like, I think there's less scholarship offers being given out because of the transfer portal, so kids have to go prove themselves somewhere else. And it's leading to the decline of Nick Saban. We've been waiting for him to get the hell out of town for decades. So, yeah, the transfer portal is awesome for college football.
For fans and listeners that just came on and did not watch it earlier in the show, Nick Saban is not declining. Don't listen to JT. Listen, it's Fugazi. You're right. And if college football is being ruined, it's being ruined by the NCAA and the greedy leadership, as it always has been. That's what would be ruining college football. not the transfer portal, not the NIL, not the college players or this and that. It's the NCAA and the greedy leadership.
College football is really being ruined by Narduzzi. If you really ask the fans, they're going to say that's what's ruining college football. So I think that's the right answer.
When you ask the Pitt fans that for whatever reason have something against Narduzzi, which I don't understand.
Yeah. Just beating Clemson in their prime.
That's not enough.
Like, how dare he do that?
Going to the Peach Bowl and winning 10 games
What?
and having Pickett in the top 4 of Heisman, that's not enough.
How dare he?
We
winning an ACC championship? Yeah. Oh, what the hell was he thinking?
Yeah, we would take that at Miami in a heartbeat. All right, so the reason why I held off on the final question
I should have seen this play coming.
Who do you got winning? We totaled up the records from this year, including Championship Saturday. All right. So going into this final one, Coach Cassidy, of course, has the lead. His record, 28-16. All right. Guess who's second, though? The Dawn
who could
came all the way back.
Who could it be? We're just bringing up stuff that don't matter. Who could be in second place? I don't know. Coach, Don, can you just lean back? Do you have like a Don thing on your shirt? To be like, I wonder who could be in second place.
I don't have.
We know who's in second place.
I don't have the San Francisco Dawn shirt on today. God. I'm second, 27-17, a 1 game behind. In third, not surprising, JT. But JT, your record, 26-18. You're only 2 behind Coach Cassidy, only 1 behind me. Only 1 behind me. So we did pretty well, guys.
Yeah, Coach Cassidy, you did pretty well rigging the schedule of predictions to make your little record catch up.
Well, I will say what saved me was Championship Saturday, right? Because I think Coach Cassidy, you went with Georgia. I went Alabama, right? You guys went Oregon. I went Washington. I think there was another one in there. The only one we really missed on was Louisville, Florida State. But I went 4-1, and that allowed me to come back. So, but Coach C have been the most consistent all year. So I say that because we're going to let Coach Cassidy go first, then me, and then JT, if you want to try to make up that game on us.
Oh, you can pick. If I want the third place consolation bracket, I'll make my choice. Okay, cool.
All right, so Coach Cassidy, who you got?
Oh, my God. I mean, I'm making this pick as we speak, but I guess I'll go with Michigan. I think about watching those semifinal games and Washington's difficulty to get into the end zone and settling for field goals in the second half. I think that Michigan defense will be able to give them trouble in the red zone as well. Texas's secondary was known as a little bit of their weak link. I think Michigan's secondary will be a little better. I think their front will be able to give a little more pressure to that pass game. Don, as you were saying earlier, being banged up at running back is going to be a tough one for Washington. Ultimately, I think Michigan's just going to swallow the football, limit the number of possessions in the game. They've shown all year they're not going to be scared to go for it on 4th down to keep drives going that take like a half a quarter off the clock. So I think they'll win in a narrow one and relatively low scoring considering the output of these two offenses.
Do you have a score?
Yeah, I can see something like a 31-28 type game.
Nice. I'll tell you what, we get that. That's a heck of a game. All right, so I'll go next. Listen, Washington.
You don't pick them, like we just gonna cut your mic because you full of it.
No, listen, Washington's been my team all year, and I could say them to try to catch Coach Cassidy, but at the end of the day, it's Michigan's year. And to be honest, the only reason why I'm picking Michigan is because of the injuries. Listen, without Dylan Johnson, you can't be one-dimensional against this team. They will send the dogs after you. They will bring the house after you. And we saw that against Bama. Milroy took some shots, and that's the Bama offensive line. That's Milroy who can scramble. Like Penix's knees with those injuries, he's not as mobile as he once was. Like, and without a running game, without the play action, without them staying at home and making the linebackers be honest, I think it's going to be a long day for Washington. And I just don't know how healthy they truly are. And I think Michigan, it's just their year. I think they win 34-16. I'm telling you, this is very similar to last year with TCU. TCU beat a hell of a team in Michigan. They should have been able to hang with Georgia, but they lost. Was it Kendre Miller? Once Miller was done and he couldn't play in that title game, changed the whole dynamic of that offense, whole dynamic of that game. Max Duggan looked like the backup quarterback that he was at the start of the year. And it's because that defense got after him. And Penix is great. He's gonna fight till the end, but he can't do it alone. And neither just having Roma Dunze. And they got some receivers, but when the line is going to be blitzed and they got no run game, eventually that offense of Michigan, instead of stalling, they're going to put touchdowns. Again, 34-16. Sorry, Washington.
Yeah, I'm going Michigan too. 31-10.
Ooh, so see, you believe. You believe.
I was always going to pick Michigan.
So we all got them. Coach, you said 31-28?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. Coach Cassidy has them 31-28. JT has them 31-10. And I've got them 34-16, all in favor of Michigan. Coach Cassidy, so with that, I really should change it to Washington to maybe
for real. Make this fun. Pick Washington. Let him pick Michigan. If Washington wins, you win, right? And you win off your Washington pick.
But out of respect for our
expert, scary.
But out of respect for our expert, he's the champ. He's the champ this year.
You don't believe in your prediction.
Congrats. So great job, JT. Coach Cassidy. Before we close, thank you again for your time all college football season. And again, coming on the show tonight, great job. Congrats on your prediction victory for the season. Hope to have you back for the start of next season.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
All right, good. Just don't wear that West Virginia apparel again.
Rather him wear FSU apparel?
No, he has that. I know he has that somewhere because he is an FSU fan too. So never mind. So to the fans and listeners out there, thank you as always. Remember to please subscribe to us, JT and the Dawn All Sports Podcast. We are presented by Give Us a Shot Network. So subscribe to their YouTube channel and remember to subscribe to JT and the Dawn All Sports Podcast. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you find all of your other favorite podcasts. And remember, if you like what we do, leave us a 5-star review. And JT,
if you don't like what we do,
leave us a 5-star review. And remember to also please follow us on social media. Our handle at JT and the Dawn. We can be found on Instagram, TikTok, X, and Facebook. There we go. All right. So JT, go Steelers, go Dolphins, help my Steelers out, get to the playoffs. We both can get in. We can have fun. And until the next episode, see ya.
Peace.